I'm with Dylan Neuwirth at Walden Three, and we want to do a brief interview about his new show, Idle Threat. First of all, congratulations, Dylan. Your show on every level has been just a huge success. Adrian Surley at The Guardian just called your show a pivotal moment in digital art, and it's just gotten mad press, and everyone seems to be just buzzing about it. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I don't know, maybe a good place to start would be just kind of talking about just the general concept of your show for people who can't attend and see it in person. You're doing something very different. There's no physical sculpture or paintings in the gallery. So if you could maybe explain or talk about what you're doing.
Well, the idea of the show was to present a body of sculpture in an installation type setting. But I really wanted to get to the speculative idea of form itself. So the work in the show, although very personal and very meaningful to me, it's not really important. The most important aspect of the show is that you attend the show and there's nothing there. So there's a bank of servers and a Wi-Fi antenna in the upstairs gallery, so that when you're in the empty space, you actually use your device to pick up an app that I designed. And once you load that app onto your device, whether it's an iPhone or an Android or an iPad, anything with Wi-Fi capabilities and a camera, you can then open up the app and then turn on your location settings. And once you do that, the app recognizes that you're in the gallery, and it lets you know that there is a model there, which is the show itself. And you use your device to navigate the show because it allows you to see three-dimensional models that have been located at certain points in the show. So you actually see nothing physically until you look through your device and start to see objects that are in specific locations. I mean, that's about the best way I can.
No, I think that's a great starting point, because one of the interesting things that you're doing that I don't know if anyone else has done yet is monetized these, I guess for lack of a better word, kind of blueprints, these digital blueprints.
Right.
And can you explain, I know I think that there's what, 3 different editions for each, do we call them objects?
Yeah, they're objects, yeah, for sure. Well, there's already a number of people who are using augmented reality to investigate what form is, or to illustrate work in a setting that's not really there. Definitely interested in that, but more interested in the market, in commerce, in value, and really what we do value. So I wanted to create work that, it's obviously an interesting experience to navigate the show with this method, but it's really more important about what the idea is about. What do we value? What are objects worth? What do we do with the objects that we purchase? So I wanted to establish something that was kind of like, there is the digital model, which is kind of like the DNA or the idea of the piece, and it exists as this digital form. So really, when you want to buy the work or the object, you buy the content of the object, which is kind of like its information, the conceptual groundwork for the idea. So it's blueprints, it's text, it's images of the work as I've created it, and that's something that you can buy. You can also buy a very low-res image of the work, which would be suitable for a phone or to share on Facebook or Twitter or your Instagram. Or you could buy a very, very high-definition TIFF image of the object as well. And of course, at the highest level, all those things are a part of the entire package.
Do you see selling digital blueprints as a future of sculpture, or as something that's parallel to sculpture? I mean, do you see this as a natural evolution of sculpture?
You know, I don't really see it as the future of anything, because the idea is the object, and the whole point of this is inserting the idea or the object into space itself, and to question form. And it's really a speculative pursuit as to what is form, and what will we accept as form, what is the meaning of it. So really, it's more of a question of value and desire.
I think that I know you, or I would qualify you as a conceptual artist, and I know that you do in the past have made a lot of physical objects and glass and neon and metal and different multimedias. But I'm just curious, it seems like what you're doing, I mean, it's, first off, it's like, I think it's really just radical and revolutionary, and is something that is hard to ignore as far as being a part of our world, contemporary art world especially. But it does seem to eclipse or kind of fight with this idea of craft. And I think that, to me, I can't help but think of what the future of craft is, and if the contemporary artist really needs to learn those kind of maybe antiquated skills of woodworking or metalworking or classical sculpture, carving.
Sure.
Do you find a value in that craft, or if you are just making the blueprints on a computer and some machine can CNC cut it, or some fabricator in China can make it, I'm just curious how you value craft.
Well, I get this question a lot, and I get this question a lot with the physical works that I have created as I got to the end of what those physical objects meant to me as I was creating them. I mean, I basically reached the end of a road. For me as an artist, I've investigated and worked with so many different mediums, like the ones that you mentioned, specifically all the physical, traditional craft ways of making something. But for me, I was never interested in craft. I was never interested in the hours spent making something as a process, although I have a very, very high level of expectation for what the finished object needs to look like. But that really only meant that it expertly communicated what the idea was about. So I also see it as that this is not something that I just walked out of the door one day and said, I'm going to go do this. I mean, I went down a very specific pathway. It took me 20 years to get here making work, to finally figure out that there might be a door here. I mean, I can only compare it to someone like David Bowie, who learned the tropes of rock music so well and performed them so well and released so many different concepts and identities through that work that he had nowhere else to go. And we end up with an album like Low, which was poorly received upon its release and only went on to influence musicians and genres, across the world. So I don't see this as that kind of thing which would influence genres across the world. Pertaining to your first question about is this the future of making art, but I do see it as that you can't come to a point like that until you've not mastered all of those craft forms, but you've investigated them and you've ended up at a certain place as a result.
I think that's interesting, like using David Bowie's album, or any album for that matter, but he did take his idea to a finished place. I feel like it's interesting where you stop is with the blueprints, almost like the instructions of how to make it. Right. And I'm curious if you have selling the blueprints to something that is your idea, do you worry about it being finished or completed or fabricated in a way that is shoddy or by a person who's not authorized, or you're kind of releasing your ideas and not able to control the final output in a three-dimensional model? So I'm curious if you're okay with that, if you it's a great point. I mean, I think a lot of this as well is my attempts to let go of the control of what the finished object looks like. All of my work and all those physical mediums has been so highly controlled and so driven to a directed point of how it has to appear that for me it ended up as a collection of closed books. There was nowhere else left to go. Like, once the ideas coalesce into an object, that was the dead end. And as a conceptualist and as a person interested in vistas and in open endings, I needed to find somewhere to go. So in this process, I guess I'm allowing the purchaser or the collector or the owner of this object, which is an idea, to have that fabricated however they see fit. In regards to I'm curious, it's like people go to galleries typically to see the real thing, to see like the tangible object. You go to see the Mona Lisa, to see the texture. I'm curious, in this exhibit, we've had people lining up around the block to see it, but they're really not seeing the real thing, and the real thing isn't on display. How do you see your work fitting into a museum environment, a gallery environment, when traditionally that model of experience is something that is tactile, that is the finished form?
Sure.
You're kind of showing the work in a almost in a pre-finished, in a pre-manufactured state.
Sure. This is probably the biggest question I get asked, because a lot of this started with investigating what the experience of seeing art was about. Yes, we go to museums, and yes, we go to galleries, and in fact, one of my most impactful experiences is going to the Rothko Chapel by the Di Menil collection in Houston. The experience of being in that room and the presence of that work and the space that surrounds it. I mean, nothing can really replace that feeling, but nevertheless, the experience of contemporary art, especially in a world that is infiltrated by devices, is that a large part of the people who pay attention to art, who are enthusiastic about art, who are seduced by art, a lot of that takes place on a device, whether the work is bought at a Frieze Art Fair, never to see a showroom or a gallery or a collection ever again because it's inside of a crate. I mean, the point is that we want that experience. We want to have the desire to see this work in person, because that's really what it's about. But the fact is that there's also this speculative question of what's the point if it's going to be exhibited once or it's going to be hidden away in a collection. We still want to experience it. So I'm just saying there has to be some other way. And I think that you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, I'm curious about, there was a few people that came to your show that did not have a smartphone, that did not have a tablet. And I think that there is a little bit of frustration, or, I mean,
Sure.
I know that there is a few incidents where people got a little bit huffy or upset. Do you feel like, working exclusively in a digital media excludes people, or do you just expect people to have a smartphone or a device?
It's definitely a problem, because I think the thing is, though, is that, and you see it a lot with the reception of digital work. If you follow this kind of conversation on Twitter, with Art F City and Animal New York, it's a lot of it's questions of what they call the ghetto of digital art criticism, and I'm definitely falling into that realm of this, because the point is that not everybody does have these devices, not everybody wants these devices, but the fact remains is that we're sort of at a what I call the brink and the abyss. Is that at some level you have to accept the fact that this kind of infiltration exists. It's going to be here, and it's never going anywhere. So it can be construed as classist, or it can be construed as possibly segregational, but the fact remains is that you're going to, in some point in time, encounter having one of these devices, and so there's people that I piss off. I mean, you have to start somewhere.
No, I think that's a good answer. I think there's two final ideas that I really want to explore, and one is, a lot of people have made associations between you and Jeff Koons and Damien Hirst as artists that don't manufacture their own work. They're people who have an idea and,
Sure.
and rely on some other source, another person, another manufacturer to create their work. Do you feel like you are in the same kind of company as Hirst and Koons? Is that something that bugs you, or something that you find an association to?
I mean, first off, I humbly appreciate the comparisons, only so far as those are two types of artists, of a spectrum of artists who have so many ideas that, I mean, somebody has to make the work. That's literally the point. Somebody has to make the work. All I'm saying is that, does it have to be the low-paid artisan or working artist who works for one of those artists, or could it be anybody at all? Specifically, a very talented blue-collar craftsperson who one day would like to do something different. And so by bringing my ideas, or a collector bringing my ideas to that forum, something gets created that we haven't ever seen before. And that's really what it's all about.
You have one piece that is, I think it is kind of a favorite in the show. It's called Empire. And I don't know if it's completely sold out, but it's very close to being sold out.
Yeah.
And I haven't done the math to date, but I know that the edition sellout is $750,000. And I mean, that's an astonishing feat for selling a bunch of zeros and ones. I'm curious, like, how you look at that. If I know that like a recording artist, if you're a musician, you could sell 10 million downloads of a song and make millions of dollars off of this one little digital recording. But it seems like an absurd, like a tremendous amount of money for this intangible object. I'm curious how you price your work and how you justify this bit of information it being valued at $750,000.
I think it's pretty simple. First of all, justifications are a dead end for anyone. And the fact is that I've been able to create a desire for these objects that supersedes the existence of them. For me, as a conceptualist, as a person who's interested in ideas, I don't think I could shoot for anything bigger or a star that was farther away. That desire has only led to demand, and that demand has created a certain price.
Thank you very much. I think one thing I want to make sure that we talk about, because I was so kind of excited to hear about it when you told me, is I'd love to talk about what you did in Golden Gate Park. I wish that I could have been there. I was stuck in Seattle, but maybe if you could explain that
Sure.
Golden Gate Park, because it was really something that just blew me away.
Yeah, when I started investigating augmented reality programs and apps for smartphones and devices, I quickly figured out that it was very possible to geolocate these certain models I was creating and put them in places around the globe. The first model I made was a Mylar balloon. I've used the Mylar balloon a lot in my work, and it's typically titled Forever. I've made it in glass, and I've made it in stainless steel, I've made a gold plated one, many different permutations of it. But what I started doing was making these digital models of a Mylar balloon and locating them around the world. People would email me with their location, and I would send them one via email, and they would open it up in an app that I had sent them. And so what I got the idea was what if we could take all those balloons into one place? Because as I quickly found out, people were cracking the code and making their own versions of these balloons. So really, they kind of gave me the idea to do the show that we're doing here in the first place. So I took that idea and I used the email list I had developed and had as many people as could get there show up in Golden Gate Park with their version of the balloon. Either was the one I sent them or the one that they customized or the one they got as a gift. And we assembled in Golden Gate Park, and with our smartphones or devices raised to the sky, we released all those balloons right by the bridge on a blue sky day just like this. It was beautiful.
I saw the pictures of it, and it just looked amazing.
It was crazy. I mean, it was just everyone there looking into the sky through a screen.
And it seems like, I mean, I don't know, the way I look at this, the way that I extrapolate this, it's like you see how like the digital camera turned everybody into an amateur photographer, and you look at like what YouTube has done and turned everybody into a filmmaker. It's hard not to see this kind of technology that allows people to create sculpture, to create three-dimensional work, to create pretty much anything they want and kind of overlay it onto our natural landscape. Do you see this as something that our whole natural world is going to be populated with geotags of digital sculpture? I mean, it seems inevitable.
I think this is only the beginning, and I'm not the only one. There's a number of artists out there who are using this technology in fascinating ways.
So I want to talk to you about the three pieces that the new museum just purchased. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I thought it was real funny. I read somewhere that they had to put velvet stanchions around your work because people were kind of wandering into the gallery and standing on top of your virtual sculptures, I guess, is what you call them. So I wonder if you could just kind of tell us how those pieces came. It was a neat story how the museum acquired those pieces.
Yeah,
you could share that.
Actually, the New Museum was the first institution that I had trespassed into. I geolocated a certain set of models in their building and emailed a friend in New York to simply download the appropriate app and go to the museum and check out the work. It kind of went viral, and there were so many people going down to a certain location in the museum where there was nothing that they ended up tracking me down. And, through a fortuitous set of conversations, we came to an agreement and they actually purchased the work. By installing those stanchions around it, something I never intended, but I think it creates a pretty interesting contradiction between what is there and what's not there.
It almost looks Dada. I mean, it almost looks like you come across it and you're like, there's nothing here.
Well, I mean, I love that. It's a celebration of something that is completely divided or bifurcated at the same time. So as much as it's there, it's not there. And really all I'm saying is what's the difference between it existing in a digital way or in a physical way. It's really all about the idea.
So it doesn't seem, I know that you had quite a different experience with the Seattle Art Museum, and they weren't as receptive or excited about. Are you allowed to talk about that?
I don't think at this time, at least from what I understand, that we can really discuss that. I will be very clear that they weren't as receptive to the idea of my work being in their museum and me stating that my solo show at the Seattle Art Museum was going to be opening in November. All I can say is, based on the tests that I did there and the conversations that we've had, there will be no solo show at the Seattle Art Museum, or at least not in the near future.
And it should be noted that Walden Three is across the street from the Seattle Art Museum.
Right.
It's, to my knowledge, you can still go into the Seattle Art Museum and see the work or works that may or may not be on display there. I mean, is it something? I don't want to get you any legal hot water. I know there's some contentious issues with it. But I just wonder if we should be encouraging people to see some of your other work outside of Walden 3, or if we should really just kind of steer people into the show that's on.
I think we'll go back to the illusion of the album. There's definitely the definitive full-length album at Walden 3, but there's definitely some bonus cuts out there.
Okay, I like that. That's good. And I think, but it does raise a lot of questions. And I think that to me, the measure of any really strong art show is that people talk about it and that people fight about it and that people have real strong opinions about it. And I think that what has come out of that between the New Museum's approach and the Seattle Art Museum's approach is this idea of trespassing. And it's not hard to kind of put fill in the dots about where this is headed, and that idea that anybody can geotag a sculpture in just about any location that they can get into is interesting. I mean, it's a really kind of, do you feel like there are sacred spaces? I mean, I think that is it trespassing to geotag your sculpture somewhere?
I think right now with the language that we have, trespass is a word that's only being associated with it, but the fact remains is that with the intrusion of the digital world so far into our lives that you can only speculate about what it really means. So I think that word trespass is going to take on an entirely new definition as we move forward, because, I mean, the point is, it's about the magician putting on the handcuffs to go into the box only to escape from it. People want that. They have that desire, and I think that this is a technology which can provide it in ways that we've never understood.
Well, it sounds like there's going to be a lot more magicians in the world. I think that you've certainly opened people's eyes to what the possibilities of sculpture are, what the possibilities of placing sculpture, and certainly made more than a few people wide-eyed about the commercial capacity for digital art. Is there any final words or anything you want to talk about before we kind of close the conversation?
You know, all I would say is, as an artist, I mean, the entire point of my work is to speculate about what art is or what ideas can do. And so I think if that's people's response, that people are talking. I mean, the sheer fact is that it took me 20 years to learn to love myself. People are going to like me or they're not going to like me, but I think they're definitely going to talk about this.
Thank you very much. Dylan Neuwirth, Walden 3, Idle Threat. Show is open until October 22nd, and it's free, so hope to see you down there.
Hope to see you there.